Now, you're going to have to stick with me here because I'm going to try something completely new on the channel. As you can see on screen, there is 1 day and 15 hours until the brand new Premier League season cards are released for Sorare 26. So what I actually want to do is have a video where I record my pre-thoughts, exactly who I'm targeting, how much I'm willing to spend, if I'm willing to spend anything. And then in the same video, I reflect on the aftermath of what have I actually bought, why have I bought them, did I stick to my plan, did I go AWOL? So let's talk through it. At the minute, I am sitting with £17 and 1 ETH, which is equivalent to £3,000 of value in my Sorare account. What that means is that I've got ammo. Now, a couple of months ago, I was stone cold set on not buying in-season cards. Has that changed? Yes, slightly. I'm much more excited about the game. I've got some great classic lineups, but still my underlying philosophy is the same. If the card values are fair or good, I will play. If they are bad value, if I think they're overpriced, I simply will not play. And you'll be able to see this is a very short video because I'll come back in about 2 minutes time and say, yeah, those were too expensive for me. Now, obviously, what I can afford and what I will pay are completely different, but I'm looking at it and a couple of reasons to encourage me to buy. At the minute, ETH's been on a massive price spike. I think in the 90 days, it's doubled. Now, all of this ETH was actually earned in the previous season, so that has been gained for me. I'd like to lock in that gain and sort of spend it. Now, I could lock it into a Coinbase and just transfer it out into anything, into dollars, into pounds, into butthole coin, whatever I wanted to do. So this is an option, but it's not my only option. So why I have it available is so if there is good deals, I can go out, get them, bid, but I don't have to spend it. But the more I think about it and the more I plan, the more I want to spend it. Of course, the game's fun. At the start of the season, you've got improved rewards. You've got all these like jackpot elements and gambly elements where you could get free cards. And last season, I did very well on those sort of luck or chance things. So I'd love to do them again. But also what I love is scouting for value. Now, the Premier League is a league I've watched a lot. It's a league I did very well in last year. So it just plays into my thoughts. Now, strategy-wise, you might have seen in my last video, or you might just know, I've got some very, very strong Champion Europe cards. I did buy one today, Jonathan David, but that is for collectibles. We'll talk about that in another video. I have some super strong Champion Europe cards, very high XP, all the rest of it, you know, exactly how you should be playing the game if you want to play optimally. So I get a little leg up. A very small leg up on the competition. It doesn't mean too much because you only need one card at the start of the season, or if you play 2 lineups, fine, you have 2. And people will have very good cards like me, at least one where they can slot in. They'll have a Saka, they'll have a Cole Palmer. So I do have a slight advantage in XP because I've got some very strong cards from the start of last season. You know, my Saka will be... I don't know how much he cost at the time, but he'll have a lot of XP. Yeah, 17%. Obviously, that would be being cut, but still a very high percentage compared to your average player. So what that means is that I've got an advantage there, very slim. But when you start adding them up, they become a bit more of a proper advantage, a little bit of an edge. XP, I've got loads from last season, which I just haven't really used. I've got 13,000 rare essence, so rare XP, which means I can load up, I can front load my cards where XP is going to be so crucial and get an advantage in that way. I don't know how many people will be doing that. The more I talk about it on my content, it probably has a small effect, so might shut up about that. Essence, I don't have loads, but I've got 3,000, so you know, that's enough to craft. If I get lucky, I can then, you know, reveal the league and reveal the nation. So that would be super, super beneficial. I don't know whether I'd pull the slot machine, the trigger right away to actually get one, but it's a nice advantage to have. Knowledge-wise, I've been playing for 5 years, 4 years, 5 years. I think it's coming up for 5. Mental. So I sort of know how the scoring works a little bit better than most people. So when you add all that up, if you've got ammo and you want to spend it, or you're willing to spend it, it's a good sort of price for you to spend it, and you have these little edges, it sort of makes sense. So that's the sort of transition of, I think a month or two ago, I posted a video on why I'm lost on Sorare. I was very complaining, I was very down. I'm getting my joy for it back. So that's the transition. But now I want to talk about the cards, because I think the cards are probably the most important aspect to this. So we're going to ignore my previous cards, and what I'm going to do is, it's basically 1 star and a goalkeeper that you sort of splash out on, and then fill the rest in. Now, I'm not going to go mental on a goalkeeper. I'm not looking at an Alisson or a Raya. I think because of the scoring matrix change, I'm happy to actually sit on a mid-table sort of keeper. Now, don't get me wrong, as I said in my last video, your best goalkeepers will still be your best goalkeepers. It's just less harsh on those that concede free. But at the start of the season, the expensive goalkeepers will cost far more than your mid-tier goalkeepers. So I'm happy to go for a mid-tier and go with 1 star sort of standout card that's going to be there 60 plus every week and has 100 potential. Now, included in that, I will be using a classic card. That will be in that region, and I thankfully have depth where I can choose different players on different weeks. I'm not just stuck with one. Another small edge. So going with that, I just started drafting some names that no real research done into them, just sort of knowledge. Now, goalkeeper is probably where I struggle the most, and this is not my great selection. Maybe I should have started with something a bit more creative, but for me, Pickford was one of the best goalkeepers on the platform last year. And how I'm looking at these cards, I'm looking at all of their potential, looking at everyone I could buy, and looking at last sales as well. So you can see Pickford's in the region of about £80. Compare that to, say, Raya. He's going to be in the region of 186, 150, 180, bit of variety. So what I'm doing is checking classic card prices, saying I think there'll be a multiple of 5 to 6x depending how expensive the card is. If a card's £10, it's more likely to have a 10x. If a card's £1,000, well, say £250, it's more likely to have a 4x, 5x sort of region. So keep that in mind, but I think on average you'll probably be looking at a 6x classic to win season sort of premium, which is a bit mental, but it's the way of the game. You've just got to play what you've got. And in that scenario, I'd rather have Pickford and save the difference, but that philosophy doesn't carry true to every premium card. For example, I'd rather have Cole Palmer than Dominic Solanke and pay that extra. So I don't want to put my star in goal. So I'm gonna be looking at people like, I think, Dean Henderson. He's not someone I've actually got a price for, but yeah, if he's in the region of £52, if Mark Gay stays, these are the sort of things where I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, a really solid player. What I'm looking at now, there are plenty of things I could consider. Like with Pickford, I was like, it's a World Cup year, we're going to get exposure to probably World Cup game modes and things like that, and he'll probably play in that. Emi Martinez gets European fixtures. You might have who's ever in the Europa League, like Crystal Palace, I think, are currently in it, aren't they? But they're going to be top of the Conference League or top of the Europa League. So, they'll do really well in that. For now, I'm actually focusing on the first couple of game weeks. I'm only looking to September because that's when the hot streaks are boosted to. So out of all my selections, you'll probably realise they've got some very favourable early fixtures. So it's another sort of plan. And I think if I bring it all together and the card prices aren't mental, I might be able to get some good returns by September. I know I won significant amounts by last year. So I'll continue through my list just because I know people will care about the players. I spoke about this guy last time, but I've been tipped off by a few Chelsea fans. He'll be playing attacking. His scores will be very good. Last 5, 62, last 40, 47. that's that sort of differential where people won't be realising it yet unless you're a fan of the club or a fan of the player. So I think for like sort of in the £15 region, 5-6x that, huge bargain. The only issue, and I'll probably need to speak to a couple of Chelsea fans, get some opinions, is he nailed to play? Because Reece James, Caicedo slotted into right back. I think he's probably being selected ahead of Reece James at the minute, but again, that I'm uncertain about. But at these prices, you do need to take a bit of a risk. But as I said, since I'm focusing on getting in early, I'm looking for guaranteed starters, is where you get players like William Saliba. Last season, last 40 of 57, last 5 of 45. Average might be a bit lower. People might not like him. He's just so popular. He's going to be so expensive. But I come back to my own knowledge, where last season he wasn't amazing. Everyone wanted Gabriel for the corners, the headers. But the season before, Saliba was the most expensive Arsenal defender by double Gabriel. And that was because of his average. So it can balance out. It doesn't take much for Saliba to get more assists more decisive actions than Gabriel. They're very similar players. So again, £33, maybe a bit of a premium option, but strong team, strong fixtures, international, it speaks for himself. Again, it's a very similar vibe where we're looking at strong team, strong fixtures, cheaper options. £25 for Konate. I think he's pretty nailed to play. His averages aren't as good, but I think Liverpool will be a better side, but they might not be as good defensively. Frimpong, Kirkes bombing up the wings. So, out of anyone, I'd probably take Saliba out of those two, not regardless of the price difference, but at those price points. Pedro Porro, last year, one of those boom or bust players. That average of 54 doesn't look amazing, but weak teams hitting 80s, bad teams hitting 20s. If you ignore the bad teams, you're averaging like 60 plus for that sort of region. I think he'll be really strong. I just don't like the fact, new manager, we don't know how they'll play. Again, just throwing back on good names that I knew from last season that did well for me at times. Robinson, I just couldn't believe he's £5. Like, £5, call it a 6x. Yeah, I would buy him all day, every day. I'd buy all of them if he was £30. Which is where I start saying, like, these cheaper cards will be getting 10, 15x. So he'll be above £50 first couple of mints for sure. I haven't actually spoke about when I intend to bid and sort of get these cards. It's very, very early. It's second and third mints have always sort of been my go-to, because after that they sort of get a price history and people start bidding and then they realise they can't get them and it keeps going up. So I've always found second and third mints are brilliant. If you do want a bit of collection bonus, I'm not actually opposed to getting a one-of, but people often get carried away with the one-of, so you've got to be very careful there. One a bit more creative, anyone returning from injuries, people just completely overlook him. Sven Botman, strong defensive team, solid team all round, cheap, returning from injury, pretty nailed. Again, if he's 50 quid, I'll buy all of them probably. Milenkovic, not creative. I think he was in like Premier League team of the season for a defender, but that price doesn't reflect it. £6. Now, I will say, classic cards won't just be all 6x or all 7x or in a region, because they're based on like a one season price range. They'll all be completely different. Milinkovic and Botman's classic cards cost about the same amount. Wouldn't shock me at all if one was £200 and one was 100. That's just the way of the market. It's completely different to classic. It's not completely. It's different to classic. So we need to remember that at the end of the day. And then of course we're talking about having 1-star card. So I'll go through all my stars that I'm considering later. It's probably the most important aspect, but £68, something like that for Van Dijk. If I didn't have a Van Dijk, I would have bought this one earlier. It's a max season XP for £62. He's trying to raise money probably for in-season Prem cards. So someone go out and buy that. Although by the time you see this, it will be too late because of the new video concept. So moving into sort of midfielders, one that I made a video on recently on my other channel. Please go check it out. Simply Alex Football for educational football content. not necessarily educational Sorare content like this is planned to be. A bit more entertaining, I hope, than just pure education, but you can decide that. Zubimendi, but I really got put off. He's moving to a harder league, and all of his averages are bad, like 46, maximum 50. You know, he'll be playing in a more dominant team, but he's more, defensive duels and actions anyway. So, yeah, I'll probably scratch him off the list, just to be honest. I don't typically like players that have transferred. So saying that, I'm going to bring up a player that has just transferred as well. But he's going to play in Man City. I need to see if he's nailed in to play, but last 50 average 55, dominant team, great midfield, dominate the ball. Sort of a no-brainer, just a little bit expensive. This is probably my star selection, and it comes from a friend from work who started playing Sorare, and he was like, oh, this is the guy I'm looking at. And I thought about it, I was like, genius. So I'm going to nab that. Mo Kudus, £20. Think about it. Tottenham are possibly going to play a 3-4-3. Super attacking. This kid's good anyway. Better. I don't know if a better team because they finished worse in the league, but more decisive actions guaranteed. I think that last 46 doesn't really do him justice. Yeah, he would be one that I'm pretty bullish on. And up front, I was struggling this year, which leads me, if you're struggling to get a player up front, maybe that's where you should be getting your star. Because that's what I always found. Like, there's loads of depth in defenders. Midfielders, you can find some steady eddies. Then you're looking for a forward that isn't Palmer, Saka or Salah, and you're like, I don't know, struggling here. So I found a premium option, pretty much. That's like not ultra premium. Sales price, rare. 60 to 40. Obviously, he's gone up a lot after the Club World Cup performances. Still very risky with the rotation of Chelsea and whatnot. So I'll need to have a think about a couple of forwards off video or off camera, and then we'll just pile into the stars as everyone wants to see. Like I said, if you're struggling to buy a forward, Cole Palmer, £180. He's very top tier in terms of price. This is a bit of a different one. For those that played during the Ballon d'Or year, Rodri was the most expensive card. Rodri had like a 70 average all season. Best card on the game. Now, people might have forgot that with the injury. I don't think they would have. So, seems like a perfect option to buy, right? Yes, in some ways. One card I don't have. But let's remember, it was his Ballon d'Or year where he won, the treble of the Champions League, the Premier League, the FA Cup. They literally won everything, didn't they? And he was core to that. The dynamics changed a bit. Man City aren't as good. Man City's team is full of better players around him, if that makes it. It's more balanced, maybe, is to say. There's more rotation aspects. So, unsure. He's going to be £1,000 plus. Am I confident enough for £1,000 at him? If him and Palmer are the same price, I'd probably just take the guaranteed Palmer win. Especially, he was out for a season with an ACL. If he does another, who knows? Then we get to an interesting one. Bruno Fernandes is a player I don't really like in person. Whinging, diving, just not a nice guy. A lot of people hate him as well. Like, I wouldn't say hate him, but I just don't really like him. But he's relentless on this game. 65 all season long. It drove me nuts. He did it with a team that finished 16th in Man United, or 15th, 16th or 15th finish for Man United, and he's averaging 65. Now, has anything changed in his regard? I would need to speak to some fans. I don't think he'll lose many set pieces. I think Cunha took a bit for Wolves, so maybe he loses that aspect. But £100, £151, he's going to be over £1,000 probably. People just look at the average. So, an interesting one. I think I've put him down because I don't have him, and it's key if I can play Palmer and Bruno, because I've got last season Palmer, for example. Having two isn't super advantageous, and at the same time, injury, double pain. But if you're confident in someone, you're confident in someone, which is perfect to roll on to Saka, who I've already got 2 cards of. But £150, I picked mine up for 140. I do think he could. I don't want to say will be, and I don't want to say could, because I could be the top Premier League scorer next season in theory. But I also don't think. Did I just say it? I think he will be the top Premier League scorer in Sorare terms next season. He's key to everything for Arsenal. They've got a actually good striker. He had injury issues last season, but before that, he was the best player score-wise. Yeah, the more I think about it, the more bullish I want to be on Saka. My problem is, I've got the midfield version, I've got the forward version. If I get the in-season forward version again, and he gets injured, that's life, isn't it? But I would be absolutely fuming. Right, obvious risk. I just couldn't believe his price. Isak, very likely to move to Liverpool, even if he stays at Newcastle. £80? But transfer sagas. When you move to a different team, it's completely different. Maybe he won't be scoring the goals. Maybe it'll be all through Salah and he just, whatever. But God, if he plays for Liverpool, just in theory, it's like he's going to score 30 goals because Liverpool would just be scoring 4 goals a game against everyone. Now, that's not how football works, but for his price, fine. But then if I'm spending £1,000 on my star card, which you'll be spending £1,000 on these guys, I'm sorry to say. If you're not, again, I'll be buying them all. What if he goes to Saudi? Because that's obviously Newcastle don't want to sell him to Liverpool. He didn't really want to go to Saudi, but money talks. So, and then we have our final one, which is more for fun. I've wanted this guy for ages. I had him for a wee bit in limited. Florian. Might be the most expensive card just because he's young, playing for the favourites, fun to watch, likeable guy. I've got like every star. Do I go and get the big one? So this is where it comes down to you make a short list and you see who's best value. You pile into someone panicking and you haven't got a team built. Maybe you get lucky and craft a player. Maybe you get lucky and win one in a double up. But yeah, those are sort of the cards that I'm looking at. It's my rationale for why I might be playing. And I guess I'm just going to cut to give you the answers. And just like that, we are back with some success, or maybe not. I guess I'll leave that up to you to decide. On the screen here, you can see we've got the new Sorare wheel. We've had some great success there because we've been bidding. And yeah, not won an awful lot, but I'm also happy with that because I'm sticking to my plan. I'm trying not to overspend. I'm trying to be smart with my money. But the eagle-eyed viewers of you would be able to tell that we have spent some ETH. We started at 1. We are now at less than 1. So, let's get into the first signing. 8-Nori from Manchester City. Left back, new signing. Now, I don't like signing players new to the league more than new transfers. Now, ideally, you want neither of them, but I'm happy to buy either, basically. You just want to minimise your risks, right? But I know I didn't discuss them in my preview, but when I was thinking of players to buy this morning and doing a bit more scouting, I was like, this guy seems perfect. He seems to be playing all the pre-seasons for Man City. He is like the only real left back they have. Of course, they have that young, is it O'Reilly for them? But honestly, he just stepped into it. I know he did quite well, but they signed this guy for a lot of money. I was like, you want Man City players. They dominate possession. They do very well. But at the same time, the rotation's a nightmare. But in this spot, I struggle to see rotation being a nightmare. A proven good Premier League player, plays Guardiola's system. Now, we ended up paying what, 338. Last sale around 36. Maybe you could call it 20, 50. I don't know. Let's call it a £30 card. That's over 10x premium. Now, on the face of it, that's probably a bit higher than I'd like to pay. But this is something where I am declaring a player completely undervalued, and because of that, I'm willing to pay more of a premium. I'm basically saying that the market's wrong in this case. I'm right. You'll see it eventually. So looking at this, I just think an attacking Man City wingback is basically what Guardiola was last year. So I'll show you shortly all the prices and cards I've bid on. Guardiola was one of those, but he's taken a risk moving back to centre back. I think it'll be him and Diaz at centre back. Goalkeeper will probably start Ederson, then move to Trafford, who they've just signed. Right back, I think they'll go out and get someone, and then left back, for me, it's guaranteed to be him. Like, happy to be wrong. Maybe you guys know a bit more, but you basically get an attacking wing-back for Man City. And if you look at some of the games he's already played, I think he played some in the Club World Cup for them. 89 when he gets a decisive action. I think they lost this game, 4-3. Now, let me just double-check that. They lost... they conceded 4 goals, so he's got minus 16. Add those 16 points back on... That's like just a normal win without a decisive. 70. Yeah. This is something I really think's undervalued. I'm really happy to pay 338. Obviously, I'm getting the 1 of 100 mint. If you think a card's undervalued, don't wait until other people decide it's overvalued or undervalued. Just go out and get it. If you're happy at that price, you're happy. You'll see a sort of trend I'm trying to help myself with here. My next purchase might make no sense on the face of it. Burnt Leno from Fulham. I was running some stats. Do I have them up on screen? So some underlying stats when looking at Leno. I was looking at the clean sheet percentage, and of course you want the higher up the table as possible. And Fulham are close to the bottom. But then I was like, it's okay. Last season I did very well with Vicario, who's only got a slightly better clean sheet percentage. But now I was like, clean sheet percentage doesn't really do how good a goalkeeper is justice. There's a lot of luck in it, or how good a defensive. Like, it's not all the goalkeeper. You'd be looking at goals against, and then you'd be wanting the lowest goals against. Of course, Arsenal, Liverpool, both keepers insanely expensive. I think you can use capital better on outfield players than you can on goalkeepers. So okay, Chelsea, Everton again. Chelsea's goalkeeper I don't think is locked. I think they could go and sign someone. I'd be very cautious buying Robert Sanchez. Everton, we know how good Pickford is. He's also, unfortunately, a bit too expensive at the minute. Man City, they've got that risk. Bournemouth lost a few players. Nottingham Forest lost a few players. And you'll know Sells is in my shortlist for a goalkeeper, but a bit too expensive. But in this middle range, you're looking at like a number of goals, which can just be one match against Liverpool or Man City. And what you'll see is that although the clean sheet percentage is absolutely awful, the goals conceded is very similar to a Crystal Palace or an Aston Villa or a Newcastle United, where in those scenarios, they're conceding about the same amount of goals. It's just happened to be, Fulham's are a bit more spread out, a lot of 1-1s and things like that for them. So underlying statistic-wise, I think Leno is a little bit underrated. Now, this didn't sell it for me. It might not have sold it for you. What was the price? Now, I've gone and got him for £304. And for me, a goalkeeper is just an entry card. It's almost like a payment. You just want to make sure that that payment is a real payment. What I'm saying by that is that some goalkeepers, they get you entry into the competition, but they also take it away because they're so bad, they concede so many goals, they're awful. I don't think Leno's like that. I know he doesn't have a good average, but he has had a good average previously. But if you go to the historic bids here, hopefully no one's ending soon, he's in the range of Dean Henderson. Like, it's a coin flip for me between them. Henderson's going to get a bit of European fixtures, maybe slightly a better IRL goalkeeper, but Sorare-wise, I wouldn't split too much between them. But Crystal Palace could lose their best centre-back, Mark Gay, and you don't know how rotation works for Europe, and I'm, basically focusing to the end of September right now. So you're looking at that, you're like, wow, £150. That's like a decent size card. That's like an Iwobi. Like, would you rather Leno and Iwobi or Dean Henderson? It's like, for me, 100% those two, or Robinson, whoever you fancy. Kelleher, he was cheaper than Kelleher. Brentford are look at the amount of goals Brentford conceded last year. They should be right. Yeah, right. Well, I thought they'd be a bit lower, to be honest, but they just weren't great defensively. They've lost their manager, not got a proven manager in, lost a few players. Kelleher's good, but yeah, I don't see that really being an option. If you go down some more, you can see my sort of first choice or second. First choice is Pickford, then Matt Sales, 517. You're just getting to the stage where there's not a real noticeable difference between Sales and Leno for me. At least not, almost double. So I'm quite happy to get a bit of value in here. And I think it's probably time to start looking at all the other cards I was bidding on. So you can see I was in from the start. My first one, Mohamed Salah, I had a bid of £900. I was second bid. This unknown red guy went and got a few big Liverpool cards. It's just really harsh because I think 900 for a 1 of 100 Salah, if you think of who's going to be the best team, it's probably Liverpool. If you think who's going to score the most goals, it's almost certainly Liverpool. So Salah seems like a no-brainer, especially if you're getting like a free £400 discount on, other really strong top talents in the league. But there is a risk that with so many talents, it can take time for them to settle in, or it just takes decisive actions away from Salah. He's more than, to be in the focal point. They'll spread the ball a bit more. So I can understand the sort of discount there, and I didn't really want to bid any further. Saka, yeah, Nep and some other guy just in a bidding war. I was maybe top 4 on that bidding. Declan Rice I got for £300 at the start of last season, 700. I just couldn't pay that. Rodrigo, again, I spoke about it earlier, but the risks with him. Nori we picked up, very happy with that. Trafford, for the early days, you want a guaranteed starter. Drewsbury Hall could be moving to Fulham, but £94, a bit of a risk. He's happy to sit there. Reece James, why did I not want Reece James? I think it's the injury risks. At the minute, I think he's injured again, likely to make a start this season, but you can't go and spend that sort of money on Reece James with his injury record. Enzo, I couldn't believe this. This Houndy guy seems to have overpaid, but maybe he's a Chelsea fan. Maybe he's got more knowledge than me. But he's obviously gone for all the 1 of 100 Chelseas. And Enzo Fernandez, I'm pretty sure, is injured as well. So just doesn't seem like a smart option. Cole, I can understand why people are paying 1.2. I didn't want to. Getting over that £1,100, it just seems a lot to me right now. And I know in time, a lot more good value cards will be coming out, so it'll come down. No problem with Caicedo at that price. It's like him or Rice, though, at £700. I'm taking Rice over Caicedo. Gusto is obviously one of my huge ones. He shouldn't be that price compared to the market. Like, if we look at Gusto's, what is he in Classic? 15. So, over 10x, I was probably one of those that I could have put an extra bid in, but I just know I can get him cheaper in a couple of days, most likely. So we did start to dip into players I didn't really need and too bullish on. Bruno Guimaraes at that price, very fair price. Lewis Hall at that price, again, he's just injury risk for making the start of the season. Sven Botman, maybe a bit of regret that I should have gone and got him at such a great price. The reason I didn't is because I already had Nori secured. So going out and getting 2 defenders didn't seem like a great decision. And I know down the line, once I'd purchased a forward, a midfielder, a goalkeeper, I could go back and get Botman around that price. Most likely, he's not going to, spike up. Ollie Watkins seemed a fair price. Yuri, fair price. Morgan Rogers, fair price. Just don't know how Villa will perform this season. And when they had a really good season last season, they weren't, ripping up scores. They're just like solid, and you can get good scores out of them. And I think that's pretty much everyone we spoke about. It's now just sort of my plan for the future. So of course we're starting an in-season depth chart and costs so we can track them. The key to this is that I've obviously got all the depth. I'm looking at how much I spent last year compared to this year. I think ultimately Sorare's paying out a little bit more this season, so I could spend that little bit more. But what I'm doing is just trying to tick them off. So last year, 3-4-1 on Romero. This season, we've saved £3 and got Nori. I think they're equivalent in sort of like expected scores from last season to this season in my eyes. Leno or Vicario, I showed exactly how close their clean sheet percentage was, everything else. 435 versus, 300, saving £150 here, and getting the 1 in 100 Spectra collection bonus. I think it's a good budget start that I've made. Where I go next is the issue. So I'm basically thinking that my forwards are ultra strong in Classic. Palmer, Saka, Salah, one of them will always have a good fixture. So if we just lock one of those in the forward spot every week, that basically allows us a really strong midfielder. I think it would be slightly better to go out and get the best midfielder on the game, or at a good price. I don't have to go and get the best. So then we're back into the market, which is why I am top bidder on Bruno Fernandes at the minute. Now, I said I don't like him, but unless they're like a Rangers player or something like that, I think you should probably, or I should probably be buying them. You've got to draw a line somewhere, and that would be my line. So Diallo is probably going to be a good player, but I can't go get him, ex-Rangers player, even though he wasn't very good for them, so maybe I could. But Bruno Fernandes, I might not like him, but I'll soon learn to love him if he starts putting up massive scores. So it doesn't really matter which way you flip it around, whether you get a massive star, so I could get, Palmer again, and cheap midfielder. My cheap midfielder of Kudus got moved to a forward, so that did put a stunt in that plan. But, there's plenty of cheap midfielders you can get. It doesn't really matter if you go expensive midfielder, cheap forward, or vice versa. But in my case, I'm a lot stronger up front than I am in midfield, so I think it makes more sense to go and get Fernandes. That's my plan currently. I won't be paying over £1,000 for him. Maybe I will. You don't know what happens in bidding wars. I just feel that, I don't know. Why would he not be a good choice? He averaged... So I was looking since Amarin came in, which you can't exactly do, but you can do a Premier League breakdown just for Man United and all games. Last 15, average 71. 71. I just, with Cunha and Mbuemo, this was the stats I wanted to show as well. This one. So chances created in the Premier League last season, he's top of it. He was feeding absolute donkeys, let's be honest. This season, he's going to be feeding a lot better players. As much as I don't want to buy him, he just seems to me at the minute a no-brainer. But the problem is Man United fans and Bruno fans, Portuguese fans, they can just absolutely pile into him because he's loved by so many of them. So I could see him getting extortionately expensive. But my alternative is players like Palmer, who I absolutely love, would be probably my second choice. It'd probably be like, everyone's the same cost. My premiums would be Saka first, Palmer second, Salah third. His second edition, I hate how this is set up, his second is already at 1,150. So these cards could start creeping up in value. So I kind of just want to get in early, get that 1 in 100 bonus, get all the spins and additional stuff that goes with it. But we'll see. You should probably check out the link in the description for my Discord, because that's where we're going to be doing a lot of giveaways and people can ask me questions for my, insights if they care for that. Building a good little community, it might help you. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, all the best to you. Cheers.